So we're here in the Members Gallery of the Fredericksburg Center for the Creative Arts. We're here with Zee. Zee, you have such beautiful work. It is a feast for the eyes. I can't wait for everyone in Fredericksburg to come here and see your show. I didn't know if you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background as an artist.
Okay, my name is Julio Enrique Berrios Ortiz Vasquez Torres Cedeño Maldonado, but people know me as Zee. And my background in art actually started when I was about 4 years old. My family was a very poor family, and we didn't have toys. I used to draw my toys, cut them out. I used to draw tanks and boats, ships, and superheroes and things like that. And my sisters used to ask me for dolls, so I used to draw the dolls, cut them out, and those were their toys, and mine were the ones that I made, and that's how I started drawing. And I was about 4 or 5 years old, and I kept on drawing, and from drawings it went to crayons and crayons, pencils and pencils, watercolors and watercolors, brushes, tempera, oil, and then acrylic. And I landed in acrylic, and I got stuck with acrylic, and here I am with acrylics. And that's how the whole art stuff started. And I also studied art, fine arts at the University of Puerto Rico and at el Colegio de San Fernando in Madrid, in Spain.
What drew you to dance as the subject for this exhibition?
Well, we have a young daughter that was in ballet, classical ballet, and we used to take her there, and in the meantime, I would see all the things that they were doing, all the movement and everything. And one day I asked the head of the place, could I take my camera and take some photographs of daughter? He said, yeah, as long as you don't take photographs of the other kids. I said, sure, that's fine. So I started taking some photographs, and she liked them, and she asked me, could you be our official photographer? I said, sure, why not? Then they had a celebration or presentation, and it was in a theater, and she said, do you do videos? I said, yeah, I've done videos. So I became the official videographer, and I did a lot of their presentations. So later on, when I started, when I went back to painting full-time, on the different subjects, I said, well, let me go back to my photographs on dancing. And they were basically just classical ballet. That's what they were in the majority. And I said, well, let me start painting. I did 3 of those paintings, which are over there. And then my wife said, why don't you branch out and do dances from other countries? I said, that's awesome. That's a great idea. So I started researching and pulling back some old photographs that I had from friends. For example, this photograph right here is from an old friend. It was some people dancing during the 70s in the streets, and it's called Salsa y Control. Anyway, so then I started branching out to different countries and seeing what they did. And what I noticed is, and what I learned, is that dance is in every single culture. No matter which culture you're in, they have a form of dance. And sometimes the majority of the dances are happy dances. But there are also sad dances. For example, in Argentina, during the time of oppression, when a lot of people disappeared, there was a dance that the ladies did. The ladies that had lost their brothers, their sons, their husbands, and it was called El Baile de los Desaparecidos, which means the dance of the missing. And it was a really sad dance, and it showed their agony. And so that's kind of an example. There's also dances for rain, for example. This right here, it's people who were, this was in Africa, in Kenya, where some some Maasai were dancing for rain. And it was a happy dance, but at the same time, a wishful dance, because they were not dancing because they were happy the rain was there. They were actually dancing because they didn't want that rain. So dances express a lot about the different cultures in the world, you know, and it's something all cultures in the world have in common. So I said, well, let me do a whole series on paintings about dances, and this is just the surface. There's so much more.
I love that so much. A painter a friend of mine talked about how painting becomes this opportunity to become a researcher and kind of lose yourself in subjects.
Sure.
And it's endless and can go on forever, you know, and then once you've exhausted one avenue, there's a whole other avenue to go down.
Yes.
So, and you've just, wow, the work is so incredibly strong and so beautiful, and I feel like expresses that so well.
Thank you.
What do you hope people feel when they encounter the work?
First of all, I hope that they feel movement, that they feel emotions, like, is this happy, is this sad, is this striking, is it strange, is it attractive, or am I, how do I relate to this painting? I mean, is this my culture, is this somebody else's culture, and what does it mean to them? Is it something common, or do you have to go to theater to see this? And I hope that they're seeing things that they've never seen before, and I hope it just brings, how should I say, a desire to see different things. But the first impression that I want to give them when they come here to see the art is the variety of cultures expressed in different dances.
Yes, I believe they will. I think as a painter, and someone who is always looking at paintings and thinking about paintings, I find that the most compelling work always leaves you asking more questions than providing answers. And so, yeah, I think that is such an amazing, answer to that. And that I think your work will provide that experience for people. Could you tell us a little bit about your process? Like, for example, are you working from, invention, from memory, from photographs? And
it's a good question. All of the above. Some of the paintings are based on photographs that I have taken because I was a videographer for a certain time, and I was able to photograph a lot of dances, and because I was a videographer for a dance company that did classical ballet. But at the same time, every time I saw something in the streets, people dancing or whatever, I would take photographs. Whenever I went to another country and there was a presentation on the typical dance, like in Spain, flamencos everywhere, and in Central America, South America, sometimes they had some tango, and sometimes they had some salsa. And so I would take photographs of all these things. But at the other hand, I would research and try to look for photographs of dances from countries that I've never been in, but what is their dance? And so some of them were made out of research, and some of them just came out of my head. I said, I would like to have this image doing this. For example, this one. It's a Russian Cossack dancer dancing something that's called dopak. And I had to create the image because I just didn't find the image that I had in my head, and that was all from my head. Anyway, so that's where the ideas come from.
so something I observed in your work, for me, looking at it, is thinking about that tension that exists between the painting and the surface of a painting, which acts as a registration of time, and dance, which is so fleeting. And I think that juxtaposition is so interesting. And as a painter and someone who has a history of dance, how you think about those two things.
Okay, when you see dances, there's a lot of movement. It's very difficult to keep your eyes on just one spot, especially if you have many dancers. You want to intake the whole thing. We have dancers over here and over there, and everybody's dancing, and you're looking at the whole thing as a whole, but you're looking. So I try to select a certain something and focus on that, and try to stop time there. And when it's a group, it's very difficult. When you take a photograph, you just crop the photograph and kind of choose what you want. some of these photographs, these paintings are based on photographs that had a whole lot of people, and I just decided to focus on some of them because of maybe the movement that they had, and then the way I put them inside the painting. I want to make sure that there's an entry and an exit. For example, some people might start here and end over here. They see this is the line going here. Some people might start here and end over there, but it moves them, So the person who's looking at the painting, they're not looking dead center and you're dead, but they're looking at the movement in the actual painting, even though it's a flat surface and it really doesn't have no movement. But the movement that we create by looking at it, it's what makes the painting come alive. I try to do that, and with dance, it's so easy to do because dance in itself is the center of the person who's dancing is so active. They're not flat. They're not standing like a statue. There's always something moving. So it's very easy, in my opinion, it's very easy to paint someone who's dancing and automatically have that movement that you're looking for.
Yeah, I love that. And I also, looking around, it's like I see you employing this really intelligent device, like in terms of these large areas of solid color act almost as like a visual pause, or it's slowing your eye down,
right.
And then you have these smaller shapes that almost act like the tempo of a song, they might move your eye a little bit faster. And so you're guiding the viewer's eye around the composition, slow, fast, pick up the tempo a little bit. It feels like a song,
That's
looking
great.
at them.
Yeah, that's great.
I think your work feels so incredibly cinematic and emotionally powerful. And you manage to do this very economically, so there's a lot of information that you choose to put in, but I think that there's also a lot you're choosing to leave out. So I would be very interested in learning how you make those editing decisions when you're painting.
Okay, usually when we look at things, there's certain things that stay in our memory and other things don't. For example, we might see someone walking down the street and later on remember what they were wearing as a shirt, but we don't remember their shoes. Or you might look at the shoes and not remember what they were wearing as a shirt. So there's certain things that our brains kind of are leaning towards looking at. For example, we create what's missing a lot of times. For example, you see this over here, there's no detail about the eye. We kind of figure there's a nose there. Where are the ears? Where is the neck? And where are the fingers? And in our mind, because we have seen humans before, we create all these things and they're there in our mind, even though it's not on the painting. And on the same token, when I paint, I don't want to create things in the background that take your eyes away from what I want you to look at. So there's no background here because I want you to see the foreground. Like in other paintings, there might be a foreground that's really interesting, but in order to bring another idea, okay, so where is this person dancing? I'll put a background like when I did with the Russian, where, okay, this Russian is not dancing inside of a theater, he's dancing in front of a cathedral or a church. So it all depends on what I want the people to see, And if you look at all the paintings, some of them have details that, like for example, this one where you can see the details in the face, the eyes, the mouth, the ear has details. But on this one, the eye is missing. There's no ear there. And the eye is just a dot. And some of them, there are no eyes at all. For example, this one here, just two little blocks here. And you don't look at this like a mutant monster. It's a human being, and those little figures, images, forms in your head, they're the eyes and the eyelashes and the nose, even though there is no nose, but it's all, so that way the person who looks at the painting becomes part of the painting. And kind of that's how it, what I use to get people have people be part of the creation, and they are part of the job, the work, the art. You know, it's not only mine, but it's ours.
Wow, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for your time.
No, it's a pleasure.
That was so wonderful, and I hope everyone comes out to see this work. It is absolutely worth the drive, the rain, the traffic, the everything.
Thank you.
The opening is this Friday,
Yeah,
August 7th.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what time?
6 to 8:30.
Wonderful. Well, we hope to see you there, Fredericksburg.
Yeah, please.